Those of you who have been following these Boulder Lutheran pastors' devotions might have picked up on the fact that I try to use the daily lectionary as a scriptural starting place for the devotions that I post. So I looked at the daily lectionary for today, and I see that there are two options, so I read them both, and they point me in really different directions. So the psalm for one of the daily lectionary scripture readings is Psalm 89, verses 1 through 4. I will sing of your steadfast love, O Lord, forever. With my mouth I will proclaim your faithfulness as firm as the heavens. You said, I have made a covenant with my chosen one. I have sworn to my servant David. I will establish your descendants forever and build your throne for all generations. So on the one hand, in this Psalm 89, I'm singing praises to God who does all things wonderfully, which I can get on board with, to be honest. And that seems like a good perspective to take during this time of pandemicking and isolationing and physical distancing, which is a confusing time, and so it's good to sing God's steadfast love in the midst of the confusion. It feels like a good approach to take. At the same time, though, Psalm 13 is a little different. It's a psalm of pain and lament and sorrow. Psalm 13. How long, O Lord, will you forget me forever? How long will you hide your face from me? How long must I bear in my soul pain and have sorrow in my heart all day long? How long shall my enemy be exalted over me? Consider and answer me, O Lord my God. Give light to my eyes, or I shall sleep the sleep of death, and my enemy will say, I have prevailed. My foes will rejoice because I am shaken. But I trusted in your steadfast love. My heart shall rejoice in your salvation. I will sing to the Lord because God has dealt bountifully with me. A psalm of pain and sorrow. I mean, it ends on a more hopeful note, but nonetheless, it's a psalm of pain and sorrow, which also feels kind of right these days. As you know, there's some appropriate unrest in our world today, centered around white nationalism and the racism that permeates our society in the U.S. and all kinds of other discriminations that abound in our world. So Psalm 13, a psalm of lament and sorrow, a psalm that recognizes that there is pain in the world and that it seems like we can't get away from it. But it's also a psalm that ends in hope. A hope that recognizes God's steadfast love even in the midst of pain. From my personal position of privilege in our society, I feel a disconnect between these psalms. And the disconnect I feel between these psalms echoes the disconnect I feel as I exist in our world today. I mean, on the one hand, I can celebrate because things are going pretty well for me. No big deal. For me personally. On the other hand, I lament because plenty of people in the world struggle for no good reason. And in fact, plenty of people in the world struggle because of oppression that's practiced on them by other people in the world. And that I lament even more. And I cry out to God for justice like the psalmist does. But this disconnect between the biblical call to celebrate and the biblical call to cry against injustice leaves me a little bit at a loss as to how to respond in this and in any moment. Do I let myself celebrate? Do I continually lament? I'm not sure I can do either of those, at least not exclusively. But it seems to me that there's a place for both in the Psalms. There's a place for both in today's daily lectionary. And so perhaps there's a place for both in my life as well. So I'll do my best to balance lament and God's continual and continually work. I'll do my best to balance lament and God's continual call to work for justice. To balance that with a recognition that God is continually good. And there's much in the world that we can celebrate in the world which God continues to create.